Senator Heidi Heitkamp, a Democrat centrist, suggesting that this vote potentially could be delayed as there are conversations back and forth between Republicans and Democrats in the Senate on immigration. I put this question to you, Chairman Hensarling. How long is this thing going to go on?
Well, you have to ask Senator Schumer. Senator Schumer caused the Schumer shutdown, and only Senator Schumer knows when it will end. And why do I say that, Kevin? A majority of the House voted to keep the government open. A majority of the Senate voted to keep the government open. But unfortunately, it takes a supermajority in the Senate, and so Democrats chose to shut down the government over an issue that has nothing to do with spending. This is a spending bill. They also chose to shut down the government over an issue that does not have a January deadline, does not have a February deadline, has a March deadline. Meanwhile, Friday at midnight, our troops were told, by the way, report for duty, but Senator Schumer took you off the payroll. The good news is I know that negotiations are continuing. I think as the American people are waking up to really starting to feel the effects of what is probably more accurately described as a partial government shutdown or slowdown, but it's still a very serious affair. And as they're waking up to it, they are figuring out, again, it's the Democrats that shut it down.
Markets barely blinking on the news of the partial government shutdown. The last one lasted about 3 weeks back in 2013. This time around, the Democrats, as you've alluded to, really digging in on DACA, the Obama-era immigration policies for dreamers. What do you say to folks what is your response, I guess, to Chuck Schumer, over the week, just the other day, saying that he is not going to budge unless DACA is a part of this?
Well, there are negotiations going on for DACA. And these are important negotiations. We need to treat these people fairly and humanely, children who came here, but they're still illegal immigrants.
If DACA is a part of the Senate plan, would the House just completely not pass that?
Well, again, it's not part of a spending bill. I agree with our president. You can't negotiate with a gun to your head. I mean, Kevin, I'm chairman of the House Financial Services Committee. We passed out a very important bill called H.R. 10, the Financial Choice Act. It substantially rewrites, repeals, replaces Dodd-Frank. I want to get that into law, but I'm not going to shut down the government just because of my pet legislative item. Well, Chuck Schumer and the Democrats want to shut down the government over their pet legislative item. And by the way, there's no deadline until March. So we want to deal with the DACA issue. We just want to make sure there's not future DACA issues, which means there has to be border security as a part of this legislation. But that's separate and apart. Again, our troops aren't getting paid. God forbid one of them loses their life. Death benefits couldn't be paid. Chuck Schumer is doing what he said he would never do. Nancy Pelosi once called this legislative arson. Chuck Schumer 5 years ago said this was taking a hostage, and now they're doing it. And so, unfortunately, it's quite hypocritical.
Some of the Republicans over the weekend, including Senator Lindsey Graham, have criticized the administration's negotiators, people like Stephen Miller. How would you grade the administration's negotiation tactics with the Democrats on this?
Well, I agree with the president 100%. You don't negotiate when you have a gun to your head. And so the Democrats are having a temper tantrum, either that or they're intimidated by their base. They're doing something they said they would never do, shut down the government over a totally unrelated issue that doesn't face any kind of immediate deadline. So I applaud the president for saying, I will negotiate in good faith, but not until you reopen the government. So listen, I'm glad they're talking on the Senate side. I know Mitch McConnell has said he will bring up an immigration DACA bill in February. But again, I would negotiate while the Democrats are holding our troops hostage. By the way, they're holding 9 million American children hostage on the CHIP program, the Children's Health Insurance Program. And so what's interesting, Kevin, is if you had a Democrat that you were talking to right now and ask them, what is it you object to in this continuing resolution, I don't think they could point to one thing.
DACA. But let me switch gears here now on the issue of the CFPB. Mick Mulvaney, the current acting director of the CFPB, allocating zero money for the next financial year. Any update on terms of what we could see with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau?
Well, I'm critical of Mick Mulvaney because I think when he asked for zero, he asked for way too much for an agency that has been totally out of control.
I'll be sure to tell him that.
And has been hurting consumers. Listen, it is important that our consumer protection laws be enforced. But we didn't need this Orwellian agency that now creates law. It doesn't just enforce law, creates law. Perhaps the single most powerful, unaccountable agency in the history of the Republic. It's unconstitutional, and so I'm really ecstatic that the president chose Mick Mulvaney to be the temporary head. I hope that soon the president can put in a new nominee. I've heard the name of Mark McWaters. I think he would be an excellent head of the CFPB, and I hope the president will nominate
Mark McWaters has the backing of House Financial Services Committee Chairman Jeb Hensarling on a busy but not so busy partial government shutdown day.